last train had already come and gone. But Lena hadn't noticed. She sat on the cracked wooden bench of the 23rd Street station, buried in her phone, trying to piece together the wreckage of a text argument with her boyfriend. It was only when the overhead lights flickered that she looked up and realized she was completely alone, while almost at the far end of the platform stood a man. He was dressed sharply, too sharply for 2:13 a.m., a black suit and shoes that gleamed like mirrors under the floor. His back was to her, unmoving. Lena instinctively stiffened. Something about him felt off. Then he turned around and smiled, not the kind of polite, half-apologetic smile you give a stranger in passing. This was wide, too wide. His lips stretched impossibly far, revealing straight, porcelain-white teeth that never seemed to stop showing. His eyes were locked on her dot. Lena blinked, forcing herself to look away. Maybe he was just drunk, or high, or weird. She stood, slipping her phone into her jacket pocket, and casually strolled toward the stairwell. Maybe she'd call an Uber. Maybe she'd run. She didn't care, she just wanted to leave. A sharp clicking echoed behind her footsteps. She froze. She glanced over her shoulder. The smiling man was walking now, gliding toward, her arms swinging like a puppet on invisible strings. That smile still plastered on his face, eyes bulging, as if he hadn't blinked in minutes. "Don't panic," she whispered to herself, heart racing. "He's just being creepy, that's all. Just ignore him." But as she walked faster, so did he. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder overhead. Shadows stretched unnaturally long on the concrete walls. And then she heard something that turned her blood to ice. Stop laughter. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, barely more than a giggle. But it came from the man. Not from his mouth. His mouth hadn't moved at all. The laughter sounded like it came from somewhere behind his teeth, as if it were trapped inside his skull. Lena ran. She sprinted up the stairs, her footsteps thundering through the empty station. She burst through the turnstiles and into the street, lungs burning. The city was quiet at that hour, just the sound of distant sirens and humming streetlights. She didn't look back, not until she was 3 blocks away, when she finally turned. Gasping, the subway entrance was empty. No sign of him. She laughed at herself, shoky, nervous. "Jesus, Lena," she muttered. "Get a grip." Her phone buzzed. A notification, a text, unknown number. That was fun. "Let's do it again soon." Her heart stopped. She stared at the message, her fingers frozen. Another text appeared before she could react. "You run, cute." Tears stung her eyes. She spun in a circle, checking every shadow, every doorway. No one was there. She flagged a cab and didn't say a word the whole ride home. When she got inside her apartment, she locked every window, bolted the door, and sat in the middle of her bed, phone in hand, staring at the blank screen. No more texts came. Not that night. Lena didn't take the subway again for weeks. She stuck to buses and cabs and walked when she could. She didn't talk about it. Who would believe her? But sometimes, when she walked past certain street corners or alleyways at night, she'd see someone in the distance, someone standing still and smiling. One night, while walking home late from a friend's party, she took a shortcut through an alley. Halfway down, she froze. He was there, standing directly under a streetlight, arms loose at his sides. That same black suit, that same grotesque smile. But now, he wasn't alone. Another man stood beside him, also smiling. Then a third stepped out of the shadows. Then a fourth, all dressed identically, all smiling the exact same impossible smile. Lena backed away slowly. They didn't follow. They just watched her leave, grinning like they already knew where she'd be tomorrow. Over the next week, more people reported seeing them in subways, parking garages, stairwells. No one could describe their faces in detail, only the smile. Wide, inhuman, eternal. A local forum called them the Smiling Men. One user claimed their cousin had followed one of them into a service tunnel and was never seen again. Another claimed to have recorded one on video. But when she played it back, the screen was black except for a white smile floating in the dark. 2 months after that first encounter, Lena's roommate came home to find the apartment door ajar. The lights were off. The floor was covered in footprints, wet and far too large. On Lena's bedroom wall, scrawled in something black and foul-smelling, were 3 words: "You smile too." Lena was gone. They never found her, but sometimes, in the late hours of the night, on certain empty subway platforms, people swear they see a young woman in a hoodie, standing perfectly still and smiling. Highway 16 stretched endlessly into the dark, carved through the dense Canadian wilderness like a scar. Locals called it the Highway of Tears, though few liked to say it out loud. Too many had vanished along it, women mostly, young, indigenous. Some were never seen again. Liam hadn't thought much of it. Not until that night. He was halfway through a 10-hour drive from Prince George to Terrace, hauling tools for his uncle's logging crew. It was nearly 1 a.m., the dashboard lights humming softly. Classic rock drifting through static on the radio. That's when he saw her, a girl, maybe 17 or 18, standing on the side of the road just past a bend. She wore a red hoodie, jeans, and a black backpack. Her thumb was out, arm shaking slightly in the wind. Liam slowed instinctively. Something in his gut whispered, "Don't stop," but he did anyway. The girl climbed in without a word. She smelled like pine needles and cold air. "Where you headed?" he asked. "West," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "All right then," Liam muttered, glancing at her sideways. She stared straight ahead, face pale in the dashboard light. No makeup, short, choppy hair. Something about her looked blurred, like her features didn't quite stay in place. Long night to be out here alone. She didn't respond. 10, silent. Minutes passed. The road grew narrower, swallowed by forest. The only light came from Liam's high beams cutting through the dark. "You from around here?" Still nothing. He shifted uncomfortably and reached to turn up the volume on the radio. Then the girl spoke, barely audible over the static. "They never found me." Liam froze. "What?" "They never found my body," she said, still not looking. At him, they didn't even look very hard. His throat went dry. What do you mean?" She turned her head slowly, and for the first time, Liam saw her face clearly. Her eyes were black. Not just the irises, everything, bottomless, like 2 pits. "I waited for a ride," she whispered. "Just like this." Liam slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded to a halt, tires screeching. He turned to look at her, but she was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. There was no sound. No movement, just gone. His heart thundered in his chest as he sat in the cab, shaking, and then he saw it in the side mirror. Under the red glow of his taillights, the girl stood in the middle of the road, staring at him still. Silent, smiling, Liam. Didn't remember driving the rest of the way to Terrace. He just knew he didn't stop again. Not once. He told no one, not until months later, when he found a local forum online filled with stories. People who'd seen her too. A girl in a red hoodie, always alone, always quiet. Sometimes she'd disappear from a moving car. Other times, she'd just never speak at all. Some drivers would drop her off, then pass the exact same girl hitchhiking. Again, 10 minutes later, they all agreed on one thing. She wasn't alive. Locals said she was one of the first victims of the Highway of Tears. Her name lost. Her case never opened. She waited for someone to help her. Anyone now, she just waits forever. 2 years later, Liam heard about a wreck just outside Prince George. A logging truck had veered off the road and into the trees. The driver was found dead at the wheel, eyes wide, face frozen in terror. The only other detail investigators found strange. The passenger side door was open. There were bare footprints in the snow, leading nowhere to this day. Truckers say they still see her, standing quietly by the side of the road, thumb out, waiting, and if you do stop, if you let her in, she might say nothing at all. But if she looks at you, if she speaks, whatever you do, don't ask her where she's going, because she never left, and she's not the only one out there. Air. Rain blurred the city into streaks of yellow and red as Greg's wipers squealed across the windshield. It was 2:14 a.m., the dead zone of rideshare driving. He had been ready to log off when the app chimed with a new pickup request. Customer. Marla. Pickup location. Old Mill Road. Greg hesitated. Old Mill Road was on the edge of town, where the streetlights thinned and the road dissolved into darkness. Still, it was a 20-minute ride, enough for gas money tomorrow. He accepted that. Streets grew emptier the farther he drove. He turned onto Old Mill Road, tires crunching over wet gravel. At the far end of the lane, illuminated in his headlights, a lone woman stood under a broken lamppost. She wore a long, pale coat, and her hair clung damply to her face. Greg slowed and unlocked the passenger door. "You, Marla?" he asked. She nodded, slipping in silently. The air grew colder. Her perfume faint and floral, mixed with the damp smell of rain. "Where to?" Greg tapped the app. She spoke softly, almost drowned out by the rain. Harper Street. Greg drove, trying to make small talk. "Late night, visiting," she said. Her voice was flat but oddly measured, as if rehearsed. "It's been a long time." The conversation died there. Greg focused on the road, stealing glances in the mirror. She stared out the window, face pale in the glow of passing streetlights. Halfway there, the hair on Greg's arms prickled. Something was off. He glanced at the mirror again and froze. The back seat was empty. The car was still moving. Doors had never opened. His chest tightened. He flicked his eyes between the road and the mirror, heart pounding. Marla." No answer. Greg pulled to the side of the road and twisted in his seat. Nothing. The seatbelt lay unused. The phone in the dash still showed the ride in progress. The little blue dot crept toward Harper Street. His breathing quickened. Okay, maybe she ducked down. He knew how stupid that sounded, even as he leaned over to check. The seat was cold and dry, as if no one had been there at all. But the perfume still lingered. Greg forced himself to keep driving. At Harper Street, the app told him to stop in front of a darkened house with peeling paint. He parked, gripping the wheel, Drop-off complete, the app announced in its cheerful, synthetic voice. His phone screen flashed, trip ended, $32.40. He should have driven away then. Instead, he found himself getting out of the car. Rain tapped steadily on his hood as he approached the house. The front porch sagged under its own weight. No lights, no movement. He knocked. After a moment, the door opened a crack. An elderly man in a frayed sweater peered out. "Yeah, sorry to bother you," Greg stammered. "I just dropped someone off here." A woman named Marla. The man's face tightened. He opened the door fully. "You must be mistaken." Greg glanced at his phone. "No, I picked her up on Old Mill Road." She said Harper Street. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Old Mill Road." Greg nodded. The man stared past him into the rain. Marla died 22 years ago. Drunk driver hit her at the bend by the mill. She never made it home. Greg's mouth went dry. "You're saying I gave a ghost ride?" The man's eyes glistened. "Every few years, someone like you shows up. Always says she smelled like flowers. Always drops her here." He shut the door slowly, as if tired of telling the story. Greg stumbled back to his car. The passenger seat was damp now, though his jacket had never touched it. The air inside reeked of wet earth. When he looked at the app history later, the trip details were gone. In their place was a single line of text. "Thank you for bringing me home.